tribe? I wanted to take the time to speak on something that has been in the news for the past few weeks. That is the surge in crimes against Asian Americans. There was a feature article on it in the Sunday edition of the San Francisco Chronicle this morning, and I read it, and I wanted to speak on that from my perspective. So, let's do it. Well, there was an incident in San Francisco where a young Black man ran into an elderly Asian man extremely forcefully. That Asian man hit his head and he died. There were some incidents in Chinatown, or one incident in Chinatown, where a man was pushing elderly Asians, once again, to the ground. And both of these suspects were apprehended, and it has caused a lot of controversy. Obviously, it has caused a lot of tension, and we in the Bay Area specifically are living in that tension. I want to first say my condolences to everyone in Oakland who has been a victim of violent crimes, and the families of those in Oakland who have been victims of violent crimes. It's extremely unfortunate. That should not happen to anyone. And I feel like we should also definitely protect the elderly. And so it's very shocking footage, and it's like, wow, like it is intense. It is extremely hard to watch. But for those of you who are not in Oakland, I wanted to contextualize this. This year in Oakland, there has been a spike in crimes in general, particularly homicides. In January, we had a record 15 homicides. So that is roughly a homicide every other day. That is a rise of 1,400% in violent crimes since last year. If I'm not mistaken, in 2020, in January, there was one homicide, and there continued to be an abnormal amount of homicides in the city of Oakland this year. Most of these crimes, unfortunately, were Black men on both sides of the trigger. I think that should be a national story. I think that homicide is one of the top issues that we need to address as a community, as a society, as a world in general. But one thing that I've noticed in growing up in a predominantly, what once was a predominantly Black city, it is not anymore. I've noticed that when Black people commit crimes against one another, it's covered differently than when Black people commit crimes against other groups. Let me give you an example. I remember when I was in high school, there was a fight between Asian kids from the Laurel District, basically 35th in that area, and Black kids in the same area. And they had it out, they fought at lunchtime. It was like a brawl type situation. It was responded to by the school, by the district, by the city, by the press as a riot. But it wasn't actually a riot. It was two groups from the same neighborhood that were fighting one another. I thought it was very interesting. We had class discussions about it. It was like, oh my God, we need to come together. We need to talk this out. We need to straighten this out. None of that happened when it was niggas from Brookfield fighting niggas from Sobrani. None of that happened when it was Black kids from East Oakland fighting Black kids from West Oakland. And it seems to me, as part of the undercurrent of how this surge in crimes against Asian Americans, the way that it's covered is getting under my skin, because it feels like the subplot is all of that rage and all of that self-hatred and all of that degradation and all of that hopelessness, all of those things that Black people are experiencing in the ghetto. You need to keep that in the ghetto. You need to keep raging on one another. You need to keep releasing all this toxic energy on one another. The second that your rage your feeling of a second class citizen, you're not knowing yourself, you're not loving yourself, you're not valuing life, the very second that that spills out into another community, it's a national story. I would move that every time a black man kills a black man is a hate crime. Because you hate yourself. You look at that person and you see yourself and you can't stand, you don't value yourself. And so it's easy for you to kill that person because you know that he means nothing because you mean nothing. And it bothers me because we're not getting at the root of this crime. We're not getting at the root of what is causing young black men to lash out violently, period. It seems like we're just saying, don't lash out against people that aren't black, because if you do, there will be pushback. Just a few days ago, there was a murder at Concordia Park. I'm not on Facebook, nor am I on Instagram at this moment. People called me. People reached out to me because people knew the person who was killed. He played basketball. A lot of my friends played basketball. I didn't. He was there at practice. His two sons were there at practice, and they heard him get shot and they saw their father dying. So people reached out to me because they knew him, but people also reached out to me because the person who turned himself in for the murder was a person that went to elementary school with me. And so people from my school called me to say that such and such is being charged with this murder. I should also point out that the practice that was taking place was a football team that I played for as a kid. Some of the happiest times of my life. I won a state championship with this team. It was a safe place. It was a space where I could develop my masculinity. It was a place where I could meet lifelong friends. That particular organization, I am so indebted to. As a matter of fact, I actually spoke at the banquet for this team maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They mean a lot. I love this team. To think of all the trauma associated with going to practice. Finally, after all this pandemic stuff, all this social distancing, they're going to have a football season. And in the beginning of the season, to see a man be murdered in broad daylight. Think about how that's impacting those kids. Think about how that's impacting our community. Think about how that makes Black men feel so afraid because there's nowhere that we can go. We're afraid of the police. We're afraid of one another. We're afraid of so many things. And the only person that could possibly feel you is a person that is most likely to kill you. Now I want you to consider all the dynamics of this story. Man going to take his 2 sons to practice. They hear the shots and he gets killed. Dozens and dozens of kids see this man laid out on the ground. And I want you to think, did you know about that story? Is that a nationwide story? Is that an international story? And I want you to think, well, why isn't it? And I think definitely we need to address issues within our community. We need to address issues outside of our community. But I do want to point out that the way that these crimes have been covered and the way that all of these murders of Black men, the way that has not been covered in the same way, I would be remiss if I did not point out that that's something that's bothering me. So look, I am always open to other interpretations. I'm always open to other feelings. With respect, go ahead and drop something in the comments if you agree. Drop something in the comments if you disagree. Let me know that you are here. Let me know that you have an opinion. Also, please comment on this video, smash that like button, and as always, subscribe to the tribe. All right, peace, tribe. and another one.